All right. It is August 7th at 3:15. And look, we care about y'all so much because Ryan and I recorded like 35 awesome minutes of podcast. And for whatever reason, it did not record. So we are back and we are going to have a similar conversation to what we had last time. And here is the spirit of the exercise. Ryan, who you all can see on YouTube and who you all are listening to if you're on podcast, is the official beat writer for Sons of Saturday. He's new to the team. He's rocking a Red Sox cap, which I like. Sam Jesse has got him onboarded, and he's going to be in Blacksburg attending practice, attending media, doing everything that needs to be done from a beat writing perspective. So we're going to get his insights from fall camp so far and also get to know him a little bit. So Ryan, first of all, welcome to the team and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm happy to be a part of the team. It's been so much fun so far. It's making me miss football a little bit being at practice. So I grew up here in Blacksburg, was basically born into Hokie Nation. My dad went to Tech. My uncle went to Tech. Grew up going to games, watching Tyrod Taylor as a kid, and fell in love with the Hokies. Played football for Blacksburg High School, was lucky enough to continue my football and academic career out at Christopher Newport University. I played offensive line there and graduated with a degree in communication. And now I'm super happy to be with the Suns writing about Tech football.
Let's go. And what we're going to do here, again, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. I don't know what our itinerary is going to be every time we get on, but going to bring you on because you are our boots on the ground affiliate. And I want to do this by saying we'll probably have you on a couple of times over the course of camp. But before we do that, we're going to float out a couple of disclaimers for camp. I'm going to give mine, and then I'd like you to give yours. Real quick, number one, depth charts meaning increases in value as time goes on. So, Ryan, I'm going to ask a little bit about the depth chart, but you listening and you coming across this information on the timeline, it's very, very easy and very, very, it's very easy to look at that and be like, oh, wow, like this is what this means. It really doesn't mean that much. It doesn't mean nothing, but it doesn't mean that much right now in terms of who's taking reps with ones and twos, especially on the line of scrimmage and with any groups that are overtly physical.
Yeah, just adding on to that, at this point in camp, everyone's trying out different positions. They're moving guys around, and that's just ensures some depth. Injuries are going to rack up as we go throughout, just not just fall camp, but this season. So they want to make sure, left tackles can flip over to the right, left guard, same thing. Defensive linemen can move around. They're trying to get stock of what they have on this roster. There's a lot of newcomers, a lot of new faces to the team, a lot of young guys. So they're just trying to get an idea of what this roster looks like, who can do what. We'll get into Cam Seldon here in a bit, but who knows what his role is going to be in this offense. He can play receiver, he can play running back. So you're going to see guys at different spots getting a different amount of reps. Doesn't mean they're going to be the day one starter. Doesn't mean they're not going to be the starter at some point. Just they're trying to get different looks, and they're trying to take stock of what they have on this team right now.
And keep in mind, especially for the offensive and defensive line, like you can do walkthroughs, you can do, jog throughs, you can do reps on air until you're seeing the guy go against somebody else and it's good on good or it's, full speed. You really don't know what you have. That includes running back for a large case. That includes wide receiver for a large case, especially when you're seeing if they can block or not, which is obviously extremely important for coach minds. Rule number 2, they're not going to let you see everything. Ryan, I wish we could be there for, to me, where you learn the most about a football team is in middle drill. Middle drill is essentially where you're getting good on good, and the defense knows you're running the ball, the offense knows you're running the ball, and that it's just carnage. So that's number 1. Number 2 is your one-on-one. We're talking DBs versus wide receivers. We're talking running backs versus linebackers and blitz pickup. And we're talking offensive line versus defensive line and pass rush. That gives you a really good idea of, number 1, who's getting a ton of reps, because you're going to want your ones and twos to get a ton of reps. And also number 2, who's a leader and who's dominating on the field. So you'll learn a lot there. And then lastly, there's obviously team. Team tells you who's starting, who's rotating, who is where. It also, from a team perspective, you can glean, is the ball on the ground a lot? Are people moving a lot? Are there constant MAs, or does it look like a clean operation from beginning to end? So that's obviously extremely important from what they're letting you to see.
Yeah, and mostly it's the individual drills, it's positional work and kind of the surface level stuff. And so it's going to be more talking about what techniques are being focused on and more just the general vibe of practice. What coaches are where's Coach Pry focusing his attention. Things like that are more going to be what we're talking about than getting deep into the scheme. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wait for week 1 down in Atlanta to really dive into what these schemes are going to look like.
And lastly, this is not a jinx because this happens every year. And we thought that we had it yesterday with Nussmeier from LSU. He's not hurt, though. But a tweet did come out saying that he tore his ACL. He's out for the year. Every team is going to have, to varying degrees, some sort of injury or injuries. Hate it, but you can go back every single year and point out sometime that it's happened to every team in the ACC. So that is something that, number one, you're really not going to know about up until we take the field. And that is also why, Ryan, they don't want us or anybody there because they don't want people talking about who's in blue, who's in orange, who's not participating, yada, yada, yada. So any other rules that you have for camp or things that people should take with a grain of salt?
Yeah, I think just also understanding we're early in camp. Everyone comes into this first week of camp thinking they're going to win the national championship. Everyone comes into this camp thinking that they're the best team. And so every team in the country, every guy's in the best shape of their life. Every guy is having the best camp they've ever had. So just we need to be patient. We need to wait till games are played. We're going to give you the information that we can. We're going to talk about what we know, but understand that right now optimism will never be higher for every team in America, not just the Hokies.
Everybody's bigger, everybody's faster, everybody's stronger, and everybody's smarter. It's it's the tale. It's the tale that happens every single year. So with that, a couple of questions that I had. By the way, if you are not subscribed, which 68% of you watching are not, please do subscribe. I'll never ask you to do something for no reason. It would help us a lot and it costs you no dollars. So please smash the subscribe button. And if you're enjoying the content, hit the like button. That helps us too. A couple questions I have for you. What does the team physically look like? And I have said for years, I'm going to continue to pat myself on the back and pat Dwight Vick on the back that we have not been physically prepared from a strength and conditioning cardio perspective to play a Power 4 schedule. And in 2023, we played ourselves into shape, and that's why we finished strong. Last year, we played ourselves somewhat into shape, got hurt. I mean, it was a disaster. And I firmly believe if you want to bet on anything, the team will be in better shape and more prepared for football games with Coach Ferg in charge. Don't want to answer the question for you, but how did the team look?
Yeah, I wrote about this last week after watching practice. This will be Brent Pry's best looking team coming off the bus this season.
Mm-hmm.
You watch practice and you just see this is a team of grown men. They went out in the portal and got veteran guys. Jordan Bassett, safety, Donovan Green. These are guys, Kamari Copeland is an absolute monster. There's a reason he was named to the Freaks list last week by The Athletic. This team just looks in better shape. Brent Pry talked about it media day yesterday. The team got leaner over the summer, not skinnier, not lighter, but just leaner. They're more in shape, and you can just see just the muscle. And one of the guys that kept popping up yesterday is one of the running backs, Marcellus Hawkins, transfer from Central Missouri. And when we went out to interview him, his biceps were bigger than my head. He had jacked arms, and that's really goes for the whole team. Everyone just looks bigger. Aiden Green is another guy that I think's put on a little weight. He looks more physically fit and ready to handle the workload of what's going to be required of him leading that receiving core. So I just think overall this team just looks in better shape. And again, physical. And again, it's just getting a year older. These offensive linemen, you're going to physically develop. They're going to look so much different from when you're 18 years old to when you're 20, 21, 22 years old. So I think guys like Johnny Garrett is one I'll point out. He looks more physically developed and ready to take on that workload up front. And the entire offensive line as well. They just look bigger. And I think yes, Coach Ferg has played a huge part in that, but I think just the natural physical development of this team and the work they did to go out in the portal and get guys who are veterans who've been in strength and conditioning programs for 4, 5, 6 years.
Talk to me a little bit about the leadership of the team. I think that that's something that's been missing. I was actually really surprised at how much Kyron and the team talked about. We had some guys who were there to go to the NFL, and we had some guys that were there to it was just a surprising thing to hear because number one, it's an honest thing to hear. But if that was a problem, like Dante Levitt talked about it with Tootie on the podcast, and heard it at Media Day, and heard that that's a common theme. And there's really two types of leaders. Like, I remember at my time at Tech, Ryan Malik is a really good example. Michael Brewer is a really good example. Kind of like lead by example type of guys. They weren't like the rah-rah loud people. Cam Phillips and Isaiah Ford were the same way. But you needed to have somebody like, when I was younger, it was Keyshawn Jarrett. It was Sam Rogers, who were more vocal. You need to have that on the team. That can't constantly be provided by the coaching staff. So I'm curious, do we have people that are in that role, and who would they be?
I think defensively, and I think this position group might also be the heartbeat of the team. I think the leadership's going to come from the linebacker corps. And
Okay.
specifically, when I say that, Jaden Keller and Caleb Woodson seem to be stepping up as the leaders, not only of the defense, but of the team. Sam Seifkes told us yesterday he had Caleb Woodson get in front of the entire defense and talk about his routine, talk about his preparation. That's a guy that people are looking up to as a player. And I'd also add Kelvin Gilliam into that on the defensive line. He seems to be an outspoken guy, a leader, somebody who's taking charge of that defensive line room that lost a couple really impactful pieces over the last year. Offensively, didn't get to see as much of the vocal leadership yet, but I'll say guys like Donovan Green are definitely mentoring these young guys. Tucker Holloway, I'll throw in there as well as a guy who's coming back. They were definitely engaged with mentoring those young wide receivers, helping them get on the same page with Kyron. And so didn't see as much of that vocal leadership, like rah, yelling kind of stuff, but more just being engaged with practice and helping everyone along, because, helping the position groups along to build a better team and build that depth.
This is going to sound, it's funny. If I knew that I would be talking about this 8 years ago or 10 years ago when I was in high school or college, I'd be like, wow, dude, you are a cornball. But he's totally, this is totally correct. On the hop is so important. Like, moving from station to station with urgency and attitude and excitement and speed is, if you go watch any team worth their salt or that is good, that is what they're doing. So what did the urgency look like? What did the energy level look like just from practice in general?
Yeah, I would say defensively, high intensity. The practice started with a field goal period. They were really emphasizing getting those reps in, hustling the guys from hash to hash. They weren't being lackadaisical about setting up the field goal unit. They wanted to get those reps in. And now in modern football, like NFL and college, you don't have the two-a-days anymore. You don't have the endless amounts of physical padded practice where you can get a bunch of reps in and almost take more time. You have more time to get reps in. They have limited amount of time on the field, limited amount of time in pads. They need to get these reps in quickly. So after that field goal period, defense went right into kind of a tackling circuit, and that was a high intensity period. Coach Pry was getting fired up, preaching physicality. Him and Coach Seifkes hustling guys around. Guys were moving hard from drill to drill, resetting the drill quickly, because that's another thing. When you're not just hustling from drill to drill, but within the drill, getting that drill set up quickly, having the next guy ready to go in line, because you only have one at a time. You got to be ready to go when you're next up. So I think the intensity and the hustle of practice was really good. Offensively, they were doing more routes on air stuff, getting the quarterbacks and receivers loose. But I will say they were getting a lot of reps, and they have a lot of wide receivers on this team. They wanted to make sure all those guys were getting reps. So they were hustling through that pretty good.
I do think 13 minutes in, we made all those disclaimers. Again, we are asking, Ryan, how many periods of practice did you see? Probably
Seven.
seven.
We got kicked out at period 7.
Okay. And this is one practice?
That was one practice. That was one practice.
Okay. So just a reminder, we're doing a little gleaning here, but that's what we do. All right. We got to do some gleaning.
Until the games start, this is all we got.
Right. The other one that I have for you is, this was brought up on Media Day. And before I talk about that, I actually just want to say, because I'm about to like super dissect a question. But I want to talk about another question that was super dissected. There was a quote put out about Xavier DB from Coach Pry. And I want to say it was quoted correctly, but you were in the room. And when I first read it, I was like, that's a little bit of a weird quote. But if you go and you listen to how he said it, obviously this is being taken completely out of context. For those of you that don't know what we're talking about, Coach Pry said, this is the quote that was put on the internet: "It's been pleasant to watch," about Xavier DB. "I was excited to bring him on board. I didn't know him well. I talked to Bud Foster about him." So a lot of people saw this quote and said, oh my gosh, Brent Pry didn't know who Xavier Adibi was, the football player, which is an insane place for your brain to go first. Yes, Brent Pry, I'm willing to bet, knew exactly who Xavier Adibi was, especially given how much he cares about connecting with the Letterman and everybody else. So pretty wild jump to conclusions. What he likely meant and how I felt he meant was I didn't know who he was as a coach, as a teacher, as a mentor. So he had to talk to Coach Foster about that. I'll give an example. Ryan, if we were about to hire Tom Brady and bring him in here, I'm not familiar with his personality. I would probably want to talk to, Gronk or Edelman or somebody, maybe Jordan Hudson about it and be like, yo, what's his personality like? But I know who he is. I saw him play, but that doesn't mean he's a good coach. So kind of a crazy comparison, but I thought that was rather funny.
Yeah, and I think it's an understanding of this is what coaches do. After my
Mhm.
sophomore year of college, our coaching staff completely turned over, and our new head coach had to go out and hire new assistants, a whole new
Yep.
assistant coaching staff. And he knew some guys. Coaches have connections, but there were also some spots he had to fill where he's asking people that he trusts, people that he's either worked for or places that he's worked, people that he trusts. Hey, what do you think of this guy? It's just like any job application. You have recommendations, right? You're getting recommendations from people. And that's really, I think, all it comes down to, because a great player doesn't always make a great coach. And obviously, Brent Pry has so much respect for Coach Foster, wanted to get his input as a guy that, played for Coach Foster. He wanted to know, does the skill set that Xavier Adibi brought as a player, do you see that translating to being a coach? Is he a guy that was coachable? How's his football IQ? Was he a guy that was engaged in meetings and all that? Do you think he would translate well to being a coach? So I was sitting in the room and I heard that quote, and I didn't think a ton of it. I was focused more on the fact, because the original point of that was he was talking about Xavier Adibi's impact on
Growing as a
Caleb
coach.
Woodson.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was talking about how good Xavier Adibi's been in helping Caleb Woodson, and Caleb Woodson obviously going to be one of the most impactful. I've already talked about him a little bit on this podcast, that he's going to be impactful. And it went right over my head, and I checked social media after media day, and that was the quote that was pulled out, and I thought that was funny. Yeah.
So back to my original question. The dialogue that I'm going to put under a microscope is Coach Pry and Coach Montgomery were basically both asked about like their relationship. And Coach Pry said it's a little interesting, right? Because Coach Montgomery has been a head coach before. In some cases, he certainly wasn't implying this, but in some cases, I'm sure that could be a little odd. You're used to running your own show, and then you're back to not running your own show. So how did Coach Pry interact in practice, whether it be his involvement on defense or his engagement with Coach Montgomery on the offense?
Yeah, from the limited look we got at practice, Coach Pry was very involved with the defense. It seems like he trusts Coach Montgomery's experience to kind of be
Mhm.
the CEO of the offense. Obviously, Coach Pry is going to be involved. And one thing Coach Montgomery said is he values the input of the defensive minded head coach. That's something he said he hasn't really had before in his career. And he's been really interested to hear Pry's opinion on things after practice, hearing, this is something that worked well against our defense. Hey, this might be a little vulnerable. This is how I might attack this kind of scheme. And so he's really appreciated that input from a defensive, a guy that's been around defensive side of the ball as much as Pry has. So I think they're getting along really well. I think Pry is kind of leaving not leaving the offense to Montgomery, but letting him run it, not micromanaging the offense, and Pry's using his skill set as a defensive coach to boost up this defense along with Sam Cephas.
I want to add this to the coordinator conversation. My post of the day, my tweet of the day was I put out, and I do feel very strongly about this. This was the tweet. If Virginia Tech hit on these coordinator hires, this team is absolutely talented enough to win 8+ games. I strongly stand on this. I truly believe even if Virginia Tech hit on one of these coordinators, that they have enough talent to compete at a high level in this ACC. And I think the coaches have been very transparent with this. This is not like, I'm definitely not bringing out my battle axe and like, let's hammer on the coaches here more, but they've been transparent. Like a lot of the games that we've lost over the course of this, extreme kick to the nads season that we just went through largely had to do with lack of adjustments, lack of timeout taking, and losing close games. Like that is a commonly accepted fact. And we've seen elite programs and other programs fix one year to the next by making a simple change. I looked up two just to share over the last year. So LSU's defense was honestly a disaster area in 2023. They had Jaden Daniels, unbelievable offense, and they just couldn't stop a nosebleed. For those of you who haven't watched it, by the way, the Netflix series Any Given Saturday, you should certainly absolutely tune into that. But in 2023, they had Matt House was on defense, and it was a house fire. They gave up 28 points per game. It was 82nd in the country, 416 yards per game. They bring in Blake Baker. 2024, they cut that down to 24.3 points per game. That's good for 59. To take a field goal off of the board. I mean, if we were able to do that, that had a huge impact on our year last year. And then 364 yards. So you took over 50 yards off of the board for the offense. And then the other example is Ohio State. And I want to preface this by saying I think Brian Hartline is a very good coach. I think he's going to be a head coach at some point in the Power 4 level, but he wasn't ready to be an offensive coordinator, and he was given that role in 2023. They scored 30.5 points per game, which is 45th in the country, and 407 yards per game on offense. In 2024, they bring in Chip Kelly. He rises that up to 35.7 points per game. So that's over 5 more points a game, and then 429 yards per game. So, I mean, a lot can change by just making a simple change at your coordinator position. And I think Tech can make that jump.
Yeah, and I'll kind of start with the offense here. The big word that's kind of been thrown around the offense is identity. They want to establish an offensive identity. It feels like in years past, they've been calling plays, not running an offense. And there seems to be no cohesion. There seems to be a lot of reliance on times that Bashal hitting a big run, Kyron Drones hitting a big pass, trick plays, different things like manufacturing big plays.
Yeah.
Build the offense. I think they're trying to build a more consistent, cohesive offensive identity. That's something Benji Gosnell talked to us about last week. And I also think when you talk about the offensive line, I think Coach Montgomery and new offensive line coach Matt Moore have put a lot of resources into getting that unit playing more cohesive and just eliminating some of the mental mistakes up front. That's something Coach Pry pointed out yesterday at Media Day. Just sometimes getting lined up was a struggle. Getting in the right spot, having guys go in the right direction was a struggle at times last year. They think that unit is playing much better together. Then on the defensive side, I think Sam Seifkas is having a bigger impact than just beyond the defense. He is having a huge impact on the situational football aspect of this team. Coach Pry said he's leaning on that NFL experience that Seifkas brings, because in the NFL, that's the majority of what they're talking about in meetings and in practices situations. Those players in the NFL, they don't have to be taught how to down block or run a dig route. They know all those basics, and so they're focusing more on the situational, the complex nature of it. And Sam Seifkas says they've been drilling situational football since the spring. So obviously still focusing on fundamentals, but also incorporating a lot more situational football. Brent Pry said they've been doing more of that than they ever have in his time here.
Couple rapid fire silly questions that I selfishly want answered, and then we'll wrap this up. So Altuner is our redshirt freshman center. Does he look physically like he can do the job? I know people are talking it up, but does he? You've seen it. I haven't seen him in person.
Yeah, I'd say the whole offensive line looks physically ready to go. We talked about how the physical makeup of this team looks. I think that everybody kind of looks more ready to go. And again, that's the promise, and that's why you go out in the portal and you get those high-level transfers and you get those high-level recruits that are going to come in and be more physically ready to go. Obviously, we didn't get to see a lot of the contact stuff. I don't know how he's taking contact yet, but he looks ready to go. We'll see. Obviously, their first day in full pads was just yesterday. There's a long way to go in this thing physically, and there's always going to be an adjustment. He's still a young guy, but overall, I think the offensive line looks like what a Power 4 offensive line should look like. Those guys are big. Those guys are strong. And again, they've leaned down, so I think the conditioning is going to be better. We're going to see better blocking in the fourth quarter than we've seen. They're going to be ready to go for 60 minutes.
I also want to point out, without taking away how impressive it is to start or even play as a redshirt or true freshman, but it has been done before. It's not unprecedented. John McLaughlin made his first ever collegiate start against the University of Alabama as a freshman for Virginia Tech. Eric Gallo played a ton as a freshman on that 2014 and 2015 team. So not unprecedented, but obviously, something to keep your eyes on. Again, as somebody who who may look too far into something, Virginia Tech put out a photo of the wide receivers running routes. And it looked like we had Hawkins at running back, Wiggins, Green, and Selden at wide receiver, and Gosnell at tight end. So then you kind of like piece together, okay, where did these routes start? You're like, okay, Wiggins looks like he's playing X, Selden looks like he's playing slot. But what did the rotation for the wide receivers look like? Understanding that it is obviously going to and probably end up being different.
Yeah, in the routes on air segment, they were kind of lined up. It did seem like they were lined up a little bit like we might see the rotation. It was
Yep.
the Greens leading it off. Donovan Green, transfer from Wake Forest. Aiden Green returning for another season. And then the guys kind of following that were Tucker Holloway, were Takai Heath, and
Selden?
Selden. Yes, it was
Yeah.
Selden. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Selden as well. So those were kind of your top 5 that I saw out there running well. And so that's kind of what I think the early rotation is going to look like. And that's kind of what we thought going into camp.
Gotcha. Anything else? Any other like big observations, or is there anything that you're looking for specifically in these next open practices?
I'm super interested in 2 position rooms, and it's the running back room and the cornerback room. The running back room kind of feels like Terry and Stewart and Marcellus Hawkins are going to be your 2 bell cows, the 2 main guys getting reps. But Brent Pry said he's looking for 3 to take the majority of the reps, and it's a big competition right now for who that guy's going to be. PJ Prelude, Tyler Mason, Braden Bennett, Jeremiah Coney, all names that were thrown around for that competition. Those were also the 4 names that were thrown out by Stu Holt for the kick returner competition.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see if those 2 names end up being the same. If our starting kick returner and that third running back end up being the same guy. And then in the corner room, you've got Dante Lovett. And the guy that I might be most excited to watch, and the guy I had the most fun talking to yesterday, is the ECU transfer, Isaiah Brown Murray. He feels like a guy that's going to fit right in with not only what Sam Cephas wants to do defensively, but just hearing him describe his play style, physical, man-to-man corner, versatility to play outside and in the nickel. I'm like, man, Bud Foster would have loved this guy. This sounds exactly like a Virginia Tech corner. He seems fired up. I think he's fitting in right away in this room, and he's already in the competition among those top corners with Lovett. So I think those are the 2 rooms I'm most interested to see when we get to Atlanta, who's playing in those rooms. And I think in terms of the corner room, we're going to see rotation. Brent Pry said he thought Dorian Strong and Mansour Delane played way too much last year. So I think we're going to see a little more rotation on the back end of the defense.
Well, I certainly agree with Coach on the a lot of Delane and a lot of Strong. I'll also point this out. I feel this way about the wide receiver room, and I feel this way about the running backs room. It's not hot wings and hot takes yet, but I am almost willing to guarantee that in terms of a productivity line, our running back room and our wide receiver room are going to be better. I don't think they're more talented. Like, I don't think let me put it this way. There is no running back that is more talented based upon what we know than Bashal Tutin was last year. Also, the wide receiver group had multiple guys who are in camp right now for the NFL. The wide receiver group, for whatever reason, call it what you want, was an extreme disappointment last year. Extreme disappointment, whether it was utilization or laziness or whatever, it was a bad unit. The running back room, anytime Bashal Tutin wasn't on the field, there is a significant drop off in the productivity from that unit. So with the running back room, I think you may not have elevated your ceiling, but you have reached down and you have moved your floor up pretty significantly. In the wide receiver room, the number one aspect of Kyron Drones being healthy is going to be a huge deal. And number 2, I think I don't see that unit being as big of a disappointment. People forget, and he's a good player. Stephen Gosnell led the team in receiving last year. So, I think bringing Tucker back, I think Aiden Green being back, I just think that we needed a flush last year, get it out of our system. It's going to drive Hokie fans mad when we see how good Jalen Lane is going to be in the NFL. We're all rooting for him, but we're going to be very pissed off at how little he was utilized at Virginia Tech. And honestly, I think it was Kingsbury pointed that out at practice with the Redskins. He was like, I don't know what they were doing at Virginia Tech, but this guy's really good. So those are my takes. Any other last thoughts?
Yeah, in terms of just kind of going off that in the receiver room, I think Coach Pry understood that. And he went out, and not only did they get deeper, they got more experience and they got more versatile.
Mhm.
And so you look at this receiver room, you have Cam Selton, who I think is going to figure to be kind of a shifty guy, move him around different spots. And then Donovan Green, I watched him and kind of got a feel of a little bit, and they're built kind of similarly. He's a little lighter, but Damon Hazelton, that's who
Mhm.
I thought of. Just that he's not going to run away from people, but his
Yep.
catch radius is going to be enormous. You throw
Mhm.
it up, go get it. And I think that's going to bring a lot to the offense. And in terms of the run game, yes, the new running backs are exciting, and I think they're going to be really good for this offense. They might not replace all of what Bashal Tutin brought, but you have to figure Kyron is back healthy. That's
Yep.
going to add something huge to this running game that was missing a year ago when he just couldn't run like he's capable
Yeah.
of. And the offensive line will be better, which is the biggest, most. I speak as an offensive lineman. The offensive line is the most important part to the run game.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you have in the backfield if they can't get past the line of scrimmage. And so I think the offensive line will be better. Kyron will add that extra spark to the run game. And then, yeah, these running backs are deep and they bring a lot of different skill sets.
And lastly, Kyron's trust in the offense is going to be huge. The wide receivers' trust in the offense is going to be huge. And Phil Montgomery is a professional. Like, you can say what you want. He's been doing it for a long time. And I think he is. I really like the way you said it before. You're running an offense versus calling plays. He has ran an offense at a very high level for a lot of years. So those are great. Ryan, fantastic job on everything. If you all have questions or you all have observations that you would like to be seen at practice, please drop those in the replies to this video or hit us up on social media for that. Ryan's going to be doing this all year and fired up to have him on the team. Lastly, for South Carolina, check out our description on this for podcast or YouTube. Saturday, we're at Park Tavern. Live music, bar tab from 3 to 6. Coach Foster will be there. We got football on all day, 42, 47 TVs, something like that. Sunday from 10 to 2, tailgate at Dale Beard Garden, which is a 10-minute walk from Mercedes-Benz. That is being sponsored by TechStream and Mehul Sangani. So thank you to both of them for their generous help on making that happen. Unlimited booze, unlimited foods. It's where you want to be before kickoff. And then lastly, we still have hotels available. So check those out. Those are all in the link. Get ready for the South Carolina game. I'm fired up. Ryan, welcome to the team. Where can people find you on social media if they're looking for you?
Yeah, it's going to be RC Bruin _55 on Twitter. That's going to be the best place to find all my Virginia Tech stuff.
And when does your next article come out?
It'll probably be, I think the next media availability is next week, but I'm going to try and have something out, maybe diving deeper into something that we saw from Media Day. So that should be maybe up early next week.
Awesome. Go Sox, go Hokies, and everybody have an awesome weekend. We'll be talking soon.